Hi, welcome to a tutorial on SelfCAD, and for this tutorial we're going to be building a house in LA, the Stahl house. But before we start that, I'd just like to talk about SelfCAD being a web browser CAD software to quickly model your ideas. It's very similar to SketchUp, but also provides a very artistic flow to it. So to start, let's get on selfcad.com and we can have a look at the interface itself. So you can see it's loading up. And let's give that project a name. We're going to give it a rough size. Alright, so now we're in the SelfCAD browser interface. Very familiar. You've got the grids. It's in 3D space. There's a cube on the left that allows you to toggle between the different views, top, bottom, left, right. So if you're familiar with 3D modeling softwares, you probably recognize that you've got a taskbar on the top, and you've got toolbar where you can actually choose between 3D shapes, drawings, move, rotate, scale, deform. Those we will go very quickly into. And on the right side, you've got an interface that you can select face, edge, or vertex, and the different view displays, which we will go into detail in a bit. So this is Stahl house. This is a perspective view. Some internal views. It's on a hilltop. It's very pretty. It has a pool on the front. L-shape in plan, and this is what we're going to be doing. So, first of all, we'll have to reference an image, and let's scale it to size. Again, the grids are really useful for you to align to it. So you can see the 10 to 20, we're going to put it to 10 grids. Okay, that's about right. And if you close it, that should fix it in place. Right, so the next thing I would like to do is actually to start building the walls. I'd recommend using 3D shapes over 3D sketch, just because you get a much cleaner surface. For this, we're going to create a height of about 300, it's in centimeters, so that's about 3 meter tall. And we're going to give it a rough width and rough depth, so that's about 150 millimeter if that's in 15 centimeters. And there you go, we're going to position in place. For this, we actually don't need any subdivision. So you can see if you rotate in a perspective view, it actually takes a while for it to get right. But if you just toggle with the cube on the left to go into top view, you can then position into place very quickly, and I would then scale it. I think the scale tool is really useful for you to quickly put it in place. Right, and then if you hit close, that should close it. Then extrude, I would pick that face, so make sure you've got the face selected. And extrude it, and then always click outside of it to deselect, and then select the new face again. Right, so now we've extruded it to the end, but actually, you know what, I'm going to push it back to the left so I can create more subdivisions to create the internal walls. That will make the process a little easier. Same goes for there. We're going to do a similar thing again. Just keep repeating the process. You can see it's really easy program to use, very streamlined. You can almost plug in your music and just model away. So while we're actually modeling this, I'd like to talk about SelfCAD as a program to quickly visualize ideas. It's I find that as an architect, oftentimes programs can actually be overly complicated for simple tasks. So if you're doing some little house renovations or extensions, sometimes all you need is just a very easy to use program to test out ideas, check if the spaces make sense. It really is to just give you a very quick sense of bringing your ideas to life. And I think SelfCAD is really well suited for that. It's accessible to everyone. It's on the web. You can then close it and pick up where you left off. So right now we're actually modeling the internal partitions. Again, it's really the same tool over and over again. This is one of the most useful tools in here, which is just taking a basic 3D cube and just extruding and actually moving it in and out of place. Just be aware of the thickness of the wall. Usually a wall is about 15 centimeters, 150 mil thick. Depending if it's structural, it could be about 300 mil. So for this exercise, we're not going to be too concerned about accuracy, but it has to look right. Now for this part of the tutorial, we're going to be creating the glass partitions on this side of the wing fronting the pool. So this would be quite interesting. I would first do the same method, but make sure you create subdivisions in there. Put it in place, scale it. So this will be handy later when we create inserts for the glass panels. But first we're just gonna finish modeling the walls in place, and then we can have a go at that. And similarly, change the width segments to 3. This reminds me a lot of Maya, where you play a lot with subdivisions. Okay, again, go into plan view, rotate it into place, and then scale it into place. So like I said, like to actually model in this program and get a design out, you actually really only use a few good tools. That's what I think is really good for programs. Like, you don't really have to go into too much detail. You don't have to overcomplicate it, especially when you build a house like this. It really is pull, push, extrude, inset, scale. Those are the best tools to get started with. And now we're going to build this side of it, scale it into place. You can sort of see the dimensions, the partitions on the ground. Scale it into place. There will be a low wall on the corner that we will deal with later. And now we're going to build this partition on this end. Again, scale it into place. And then once you're done, it's always, you'll hit the cross. Okay, and then now, similarly, we're going to create another cube for this end. This one here is a low wall because there are windows that overlook the other end. So we're going to try something different. We're going to extrude it from the existing wall, put it into place, and then move that face inwards to create the thickness. And then now we're gonna push that downwards. Okay, there you go. That should put it in place. And then we are going to create the windows on top. For that one, all you have to do is, again, if you hold Control while moving, you actually make a copy and you create a new element. So that one, let's scale a bit thinner for the glass. And if we close that will close out that element. And now we've got that window part of the wall. And we're going to add details by creating edges. Pull it from the side, so it creates a loop. Well, for this one, you actually don't really need a loop, because what we are going to do is we're going to delete that face. We just have this plane over here. So that's where the windows are. So now we're going to create the internal parts of the kitchen. We're just going to, because this is a massing exercise, okay, we're just going to keep it really simple, just to get an understanding of the flow of spaces. Put it in place, scale it, and we're going to use the same method as we did for the external walls. We're going to extrude it so that we can then later on extrude that face to create that internal wall. Again, extrude again. Like I said, at the end of the day, master these few tools and you're ready to go. You can model whatever designs that you have in mind. It's really good if you have a sketch, for example, take a picture of it, scan it in, and then reference the image. You can start to build it up. You can, as you can see, you can always key in the extrusion number if you want to be precise. Extrude again. So this one would be the kitchen area. If you have time, you should spend time modeling the kitchen top, the sink. That will take the model to the next level. For that one, I'm going to add detail. So by adding detail, you create an extra line. Okay, now you bring that to place, so you can create a lower wall for that one. If you make any mistakes, you just hit, like most programs, Control Z if you're on a Windows machine, or Command Z to do an undo. These are more internal partitions. What surprises me is that SelfCAD is surprisingly intuitive to use, and I've used many programs before, like Rhino, SketchUp, Maya, AutoCAD 3D, and what really sets this program apart is basically the ability to model on a browser. So you could be even modeling it on your iPad, for example. You could be sitting anywhere. You don't even have to have a very powerful computer. So again, you add detail on that face by creating extra edges, push and pull to create internal partitions. Next few things we're going to build is actually this. This is a fireplace. That's the upper portion of the fireplace. And then we're going to have to build little pillars that holds the upper portion, where you got the hood. There you go. By holding Control while moving, you can actually make a copy of something. So it kind of saves you time from going to the 3D shapes toolbar. Again, move and copy. And there you have a rough model of the fireplace. We are then going to be creating this countertop over here. It's a breakfast counter. It's about 90 centimeters tall. Let's make another one over here. That's where the sink is. Suppose that can be a little bit higher. Yeah, let's make it a little bit higher. Looks about right. And for this one, we're going to create a little bit of a shelf. Not quite a shelf, but structure that holds it in place. Also, I just want to show you this inset tool. You push this inwards, and then you can select those faces and extrude it, and then inset it again. But when you hit inset, make sure you make it so that it insets it individually. And let's delete that piece so you can see through it. So with the same method, we are going to start to break up these partition walls. Select it, it changes color, and then let's pick those faces. And if we go to modify inset and take individual, you can inset it, and then we split it, and we can then change the opacity so it reads more as glass. So we're going to do the same for this side of the wall. I'm going to select the faces. Now you can't really do it all at the same time, so let's start with this one first. And then we split it again and add some opacity. There you go. It's looking more and more like the actual building itself. I find this process very intuitive, because you really only need those few tools to actually really bring your design to life. Because, as an architect, if you're working on a design, most of the time the design sort of changes with time, so I would suggest to not be too precious about the design in the beginning, just to get your ideas out on paper, out in three-dimensional form, so you can have a better understanding of where the design is headed, and then you can decide which steps you would like to take. Right, so now that we've created those partitions, we're next going to be building the columns. You can see them on plan, they're dotted in these very important sections to hold up the building. So we're going to place these. They usually stay in line with the walls. So once you have that in a row, you can select all of it and make copies across. Again, with the same method as I mentioned before, holding control while you move an object. Okay, we've got two columns there. Let's delete one of them. And once that is in place, you're in a very good position to then start drawing the I-beam. For this, I would use 3D Sketch. So by selecting the left and right orientation, we can then just start to draw a rectangle. This would be the top, and then we can draw the bottom, again with the rectangle. Again, we can then scale this into place later on. Let's just draw this first. Now we need a connecting piece, top to bottom. At the moment they will overlap, but what we will do is we will then delete these connecting pieces. Okay. Once that is done, once we've deleted those pieces, we will close that, and that will close out the element. Go to Tools, let's fill it in, and then we'll move this into the right position. Let's delete that one, that's just lines. And we can move this surface to the right position, and then we will drop this, put it in the right place. Once it's in the right place, then we can scale it to size so it matches the column. There you go. So it sits on it. We're going to scale it to size. There you go. It's a bit thinner. Put it down. So now it aligns with the column. You will see that when moving these items, there's a line at the bottom, so it's really useful. Then you can kind of see whether it matches up with the plan that you've referenced in. Okay, so now we've extruded this object. We'll select those face, and then we'll move it across into the very far end of the building. So that's our first I-beam in place. We'll copy by holding down Control and move. Okay, this one here, we've got to push it back, so we scale it. Then we're going to do the same thing for this part. We can bring it across. There you go. So now we've got the I-beams in place. The next thing we need to do is actually create a roof joist which runs perpendicularly to our I-beams. So we're going to move it in place. We're going to rotate it. Again, go into plan view. You notice I've turned on parallel projection. It actually gives you much more precise control of the model. It takes away the perspective distortion. So again, you can see the line on the floor, and we can then align it to those dotted lines on the ground. Drop it into place. Right. So right now, we will then copy these timber joists across. Again, this is a mistake. You shouldn't move the face. For this one, you actually have to move the object itself. So what you have to do is deselect the faces. Copy it across. Yep. copy that across. So for this sake, I'm just going to do it very quickly, just so we can get a rough idea. Okay, then now I can select quite a number of them and move them all at the same time. That will save us some time. There we go, move into position. Okay. Go. These are small little detailing that you can add to your model to give it a real sense of realism, in my opinion. It makes the building feel real. And also it gives it an identity. Every building is unique in its own way. And now it's on this side. We've rotated it, and we're going to do the same thing and bring it across. So this runs perpendicularly to the other side. Okay. Once we reach this section, we might want to copy them over, and then we can scale them a little shorter. Right, let's move those down. Almost there, just a few more pieces. And there we have it. We need to add that in there as well so that can support our structure. We missed that one out. That can support our timber joists. Scale that back in. Okay. And now we move and copy it across. There you go. Oops. Just realized that it's a bit taller, so we're just going to move it downwards. Perfect. So the next thing we're going to do is actually going to build the piece of roofing that sits on top of the timber joist. So for that, we're going to keep it quite simple. It's just going to be a plane, but it's good to have these two subdivisions. As you'll see, we can then extrude that from it. Let's create an opacity so we can still look into the house. Okay, now we're going to use loop selection to select these edges. We're going to bring that back in by moving it so it aligns to that section of the house. Select that face, and let's extrude it across. Don't worry about those disappearing. Once you've closed it, that will reappear. There you go. So there you go, that's the house. It's actually, we're getting there. We're almost done. Let's take a quick look at it in perspective. But yeah, let's finish off the floor as well. Let's expand it into position. And then what we can do is we can draw a shape. So we've not used this tool yet. So we can draw rectangular shapes, and it actually cuts into each other. It sort of Boolean unions these shapes together, which is really useful. It's very, very useful to create quick sketches. And then if we close that, that should create somewhat of a bit of a depth. And then what we're going to do is we're going to Boolean difference it. And there you go. You have your building right there. Let's make it gray so it stands out a little. Now we've got perspective view. You can catch, if you look at it in wire mesh, that looks pretty cool. That's very similar to the view that we were looking at. And that's it. You've got your Stahl house all done. I hope you find this tutorial helpful. And actually, all you have to do is just spend some time on it, and you realize that actually 3D modeling is for everyone, especially with a program like SelfCAD. You don't really have an excuse. Just keep on practicing. Just build a simple house with a plan and elevation, and see where it goes. Thanks for watching.